Hey, it's Huck. And for those of you in bad need of some toilet paper, you might want to download Mitt Romney's 80-page, 59-point jobs plan entitled Believe in America, Mitt Romney's Plan for Jobs and Economic Growth. Now, say what you will about Mitt Romney, but you gotta give him credit for one thing. Coming up with an 80-page, 59-point plan was a stroke of genius. Not that there are any ideas, mind you, within the plan that would actually create jobs or improve the economy, unless you subscribe to the theory that perhaps the Bush plan for job destruction might work better if put on steroids. Americans, by and large, have pretty short attention spans. And I'm speaking from experience here, just noting the fact of how few people actually, watch my 20 and 30-minute long videos I post on this channel. 59 steps is brilliant. I mean, nobody's going to take the time to read through all that, especially when you come to find out that each of the 59 points is interspersed with pages and pages of revisionist history. The same blah, blah, blah Republican talking points we've heard ever since Reagan. What I really came to appreciate were all these distorted but colorful charts and graphs laid out throughout the piece, which are all cleverly designed to lull you to sleep, even while you don't realize what you're looking at is the very blueprint for the steepest economic cliff ever put on paper. The sad reality is that not only will very few voters ever take a look at that 59-point plan, but very few television news programs will examine it either. For as most of you know, actual policy analysis, or reading anything other than the latest polls, really doesn't fit into the job description of most TV news personnel these days. So, with nothing better to do other than to lament the fact that none of my own brilliant music videos are going anywhere fast on my other YouTube channel, well, I decided to do a little of this work for you. But first, let me say I am serious about my music videos.
Some men live to love, so many girls not one, like I used to do. And now before my eyes there sits the lovely one. Girl, I want you. She's a lovely girl that can get her anyone. She's a lovely girl, you would think so too. She's a lovely girl, and how can I go living on? Oh, you lovely girl, I love you. I remember fighting in the war.
The war?
And I say it again, I don't want no more.
What war?
But most of all, I remember you. Most of all, I remember you.
Clone! You can't say you remember fighting in a war when you've never been in the military. It's called poetic license, Huck.
Before I ever wrote this song, I wondered how and what went wrong. Lost the only girl I've ever loved. Yet I felt sadness, yet I felt pain. Yet I felt madness, 'cause I wanted
Hey, I appreciate the views, so if you click on any of those, you're a friend for life. But back to the issue at hand. Now, I'm determined to keep this video short, so I'm not going to give a rundown point by point. After all, if folks aren't going to sit down and read this crap for themselves, they're certainly not going to sit still while I rant on endlessly about how awful and devastating it is for America. Suffice it to say that, well, for starters, Romney proposes dismantling virtually every environmental regulation that somehow inhibits every oil, gas, and chemical company from making obscene profits above and beyond the enormous profits and environmental damage they're already responsible for. 2, Romney proposes undoing the Dodd Barney Frank regulations on the financial industry while deregulating our banks and financial institutions even deeper, because apparently crashing our economy to the brink of utter despair just wasn't good enough. 3, Romney proposes destroying or cutting virtually every safety net that's been in place in this country over the last 75 years. For instance, Romney would repeal the Affordable Care Act and completely dismantle Medicare, forcing folks to fend for themselves out on the open market. Oh, perhaps giving some folks a voucher for a portion of the cost of their health care needs, but then at the same time cutting back on Social Security to such an extent that for most Americans, they wouldn't have enough Social Security left to be able to purchase the rest of a health insurance policy, let alone meet their other living expenses. 4, Romney proposes adding an additional $3 to $5 trillion in additional debt to the nation by granting millionaires like him an additional massive tax cut. Apparently, he just doesn't have enough funds in those offshore bank accounts. 5, Romney wants to end unions wherever they remain, and wants to take the further step to assure that all federal projects from this point on are not inhibited from having to hire union workers or even U.S. companies if the work can be done cheaper. 6, Romney proposes an expansion of free trade agreements around the world, with assurances of no interference for U.S. companies that option to ship jobs overseas and further erode the American standard of living. Finally, Romney proposes shifting the responsibility for most federal agencies and the work they do to individual states, and forcing them to come up with their own funding mechanisms to run those agencies. This coming at a time when states are already so overburdened with obligations that they can't repair their bridges and roads, that they've already forced the layoffs of massive numbers of teachers around the country, that they've already closed state parks around the country, that they've so underfunded individual communities that many cities have closed libraries, closed city parks. Some cities are now paying police and firefighters minimum wage, while at the same time raising their co-pays for their health insurance. I suspect the Republican answer to all this will be, hey, if you need those programs, implement a state sales tax. Now, a state sales tax is regressive in that, the average Joe who works for a living is going to pay a much greater percentage of his income toward these government programs, while rich folks like Mitt Romney, well, I guess they'll be laughing all the way to that Swiss bank of theirs. Anyway, I'm Huck. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.